It is fancy. Good evening, good folks, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission work session for this Monday, September 11th, 2023. Before we move on with our business, there is public comment at the end of the meeting, not at the beginning of this particular meeting, unlike our general sessions, but there's public comment at the end of this meeting. So anyone wishing to give public comment can phone in or do so in person and have up to 3 minutes to provide remarks. May we have roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Hood,
Here.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Adjournment,
Here.
Commissioner Gorman,
Here.
Commissioner Emery,
Here.
Commissioner St. Clair.
Here.
Thank you. So before we get on with our business of tonight's meetings, I just came from the USS Silverside Submarine Museum as part of a 9/11 commemoration event. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation to the museum for hosting today's event and also facilitating the Patriot Day exhibit. Some remnants of the World Trade Center are on loan from a museum in Illinois at our USS Silverside Submarine Museum through June of next year. That exhibit will be displaying. So if you have an opportunity to go there and bring family, friends, and others to remember what had transpired there and pay homage as well. But I would also like to just to share some excerpts of the remarks that I provided earlier at the Silversides. 22 years ago today, now collectively referred to 9/11, 4 coordinated suicide terrorist attacks against the United States were carried out by the militant Islamist network Al-Qaeda. 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airlines that morning. The hijackers crashed 2 planes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City and a 3rd plane into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The 4th plane is thought to have been intended to hit the White House or the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. The valiant passengers aboard the aircraft averted that attack by revolting in an attempt to wrestle back control of the plane. The hijackers of the 4th plane ultimately crashed the plane in a Pennsylvania field far from the terrorists' intended target. The passengers aboard United Airlines Flight 93 acted heroically, saving hundreds of others' lives while losing their own. These attacks resulted in approximately 3,000 fatalities. The events of 9/11 comprise the deadliest terrorist attack in human history and the single deadliest incident for firefighters and law enforcement officers in U.S. history. 340 firefighters and 72 police officers lost their lives, with many more subsequently suffering from and losing their lives to chronic health conditions that developed as a result of the terrorist attacks. A common refrain surrounding 9/11 is never forget. Never forget how extremism and hatred can inflict such death, destruction, and pain, reminding us to remain vigilant against such in all its forms. Never forget the thousands of people who lost their lives while carrying out their day normally that morning. Never forget how ordinary citizens pushed back against evil on the 4th plane, risking their own lives to save the lives of so many others. Never forget the amazing heroism displayed by first responders that day and the ultimate sacrifice hundreds of them paid in service to others. Today's commemoration is focused on the lives lost and the heroism displayed on 9/11. We honor them, we honor their sacrifices and the valor they exhibited. And may we, the living, also honor them in our daily lives by rejecting hate and extremism in all its forms, by expressing care and compassion for one another, by embracing and celebrating our shared humanity. So if you would join me in a moment of silence to remember all those that have perished on that day and the days thereafter in service. Thank you. First order of business on our agenda tonight is the former employee health refund calculation.
So this is a continuation of items that we discussed previously earlier this year. Just as a reminder, earlier this year, one of the unions brought to our attention that we had a miscalculation sometime between 2017 and the end of 2022 regarding our insurance contributions. We've rectified that with our current staff and both non-union and union. This has to do with the employees who left service with the city, whether they retired or went to another position, from when the time the calculation error occurred until the end of 2022. This one was a little bit harder to come up with because it wasn't the active employees, so the HR had to go back and look when people left, what their benefits were paid, things of that nature. There's 58 former team members who are impacted by this, and if we do the payback to them, it would be about $51,696. The amount requested is a buffer there of $1,000, just in case there's a little bit of a flex there. But Hayden in the finance departments run these numbers pretty well. So this would be from multiple departments, multiple funds. This wouldn't be just from the general fund or from one of the other funds, just depending on where the individuals worked. The payments run, as I note in the memo, anywhere. The maximum is a $3,200 payment for an employee who left just prior to the end of 22, and then as low as $10 for someone who was leaving just prior to the or just after the error occurred. So staff is recommending that we approve this. This would come to you at the second meeting of the month. But I just wanted to put it out there if there are any specific questions. I do have a more detailed breakdown. Just like with the active employees, I didn't attach the active breakdown because I didn't want that out there as a public file, just because of the information that's in it as it relates to the employees. So if we do go down this road and repay the former employees for the overpayment, it'll be a little bit of a different process because they're not current employees. Hayden in the finance department will actually kind of have to track down some of these folks because it's been a number of years since they've left service, and then we'd have to get something signed from them that says that they're accepting this money and that we're sending it to the right account and all that. The last time, because we already have all the account information, it was kind of an easy repayment. So,
Commissioners, any questions for the manager on this topic? All right. Seems straightforward enough. This is in alignment with how we handled the active.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we shall proceed with the next item, cost recovery ordinance, chapter 22, public safety. Welcome, Chief Kozel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I sorry, we should say it in unison, shouldn't we? That's usually what you do.
Come on, Commissioner. Sorry. Let's try that again. Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll work on it.
So, hopefully you had some time to digest this proposed ordinance. When I started looking at what we've done for services, I asked, do we have a cost recovery ordinance? We can try to send somebody a bill, but if we don't have an ordinance for something, then we wouldn't have anything to fall back on. At other communities that I've been in, that we have found that we've needed to have this in place. But when it comes, one of the biggest things that came to light is when we're out doing our job, police, fire, DPW, for lines down. We spend a considerable amount of time sitting there. Consumers Power has an actual division that's manned 5 days a week. That's all they do is handle those type of requisitions. So it's not just inclusive of that. As you look at the actual ordinance, this is only meant for those situations where we have an accident, where we have down power lines, other type of events. If we had a tanker come through town and get in an accident and suddenly we have a spill, or we have something that occurs, we need to have something as a city, I recommend, that we can fall back on to be able to bill and recoup our costs. So that's the reasoning why I brought this to the attention of Attorney Schreier, and him and I worked together on pretty much mimics some other ordinances from other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Chief Kozel. Commissioners, questions on this proposed ordinance? Commissioner Hood.
So, and I may just not be understanding it. So with this, say if you got in an accident, a civilian, citizen, one of our citizens get in an accident in the city, hit a pole, you got a down power pole or somewhat, and we have to set out and block the road off. Now, are you saying that the city's going to charge that individual, or charges insurance, or is this going to be a charge from who? Who would we?
I guess it would be
recouping it from.
I apologize. It would be on a case-by-case basis. In the situation that you're describing, if there was intent behind that, I would also be going after the person that was responsible. Intentional act. But more likely than not, if it was an accident and then we have that pole line go down, then it would just be our company that would be providing the service. We'd be looking at it on a case-by-case basis. And we handle so many accidents every day, we aren't going to be going after people for our time spent for those accidents. These are meant for those special cases where we have extended periods of time of police, fire, and DPW services.
Mr. Manager, you have something to add?
Yeah, so just as an example, in one of my previous communities, we had a cost recovery ordinance, and it ended up applying specifically to a nonprofit institution we had there because we would get so many false alarm calls for fire, like a fire alarm would get pulled. We would have to go and we couldn't, even if they called us off, we would still have to go to the building and respond. And once they hit so many per year, then we started charging them a fee based on that, just to kind of recover that. So yeah, there is some discretion there, but it's just to kind of in those extraordinary or out of the ordinary circumstances.
And I think it's 3 after the third fire, false alarm on a house.
I believe so, yes.
Then we start.
I get those sent to me on a monthly basis, yes.
Yeah.
And if in the actual ordinance, it talks about the fee that's outlined, I think that the city commission has to establish, and after the ordinances, if we decide to go forward with the ordinance, would have to have that discussion about those type of fees that we would associate with.
Any follow-up, Commissioner?
One more. Okay, just so, I don't know, on gross negligence, say someone's speeding down the road or trying to get away from law enforcement, slams into something and it causes for that road to be shut down. I would take it that we would probably then go after that person.
Either go at them with the ordinance, or I'd work with our local prosecutor to try to get those and the fines when there's adjudication of the actual offense.
Okay,
Either one we could, yes.
I'm good.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Emery.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of confused me. I had to reread it several times. Like I pictured a visitor, a tourist coming to our city and their car caught on fire and they would be charged for that? No. Okay.
I believe there is a caveat in there for non residents for a structure, but
Okay.
pretty much everybody that we're dealing with, we're not going to be charging because they're already on a prorated basis paying for our services.
Okay.
So,
Um,
even if we go outside the city on a mutual aid basis, we aren't going to be charging.
Okay. So, because I definitely understood somebody who puts in a bomb threat should get charged. Usually that's kids for the school, though. So we might have a hard time getting a dime out of them.
True. True. This at least allows us, if we're able to bill through the parents, hold them accountable for their children.
Okay.
Allows us to.
So if it's a case by case, are we setting ourselves up to be accused of being biased or prejudiced?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We would, I think it's, right now with consumers, I'll just go back to consumers. If a line's down after, I think it's 60 minutes or 90 minutes, because they're gonna try to get there, right? If there is, after that time period, we can start billing them for time. That'd be across the board. Any single time, doesn't matter who, where. Pull to house, pull to pole. Bill for our services.
So you would be billing consumers,
Yes.
not the resident.
No. Again,
Okay.
if there's some type of intentional act, I would look at that to be able to hopefully back us, but I would think that in my past experience, I would go at it through the judicial process in those instances. Then it's ordered through that judge.
Gotcha. That's a little more understandable. Okay.
Can you follow?
Yep. I'm done. No,
No?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Can you clarify? Because the impression I heard from your answer to Commissioner Hood as well as to Commissioner Emery is that if there were a vehicular incident and we're responding to it, we're not going to be charging for that.
Don't now.
Okay. So right now that should be removed from this ordinance then, because it is.
No, if
item-
there's a vehicular accident that involves some type of situation where we're there for an extended period of time, we wouldn't actually be billing the person. We'd be going after the insurance company for any type of cost for our time.
And if
So
the
if there's some
person
type of
didn't-
spill, there's something in the car, something that would cause something extenuating circumstances for us to be there for a longer period of time, then we would entertain.
Okay. Could we get that refined language? Because right now the language in there for item A of cost recovery charges is responding to a multi or single motor vehicle and or pedestrian accident or other incident involving motor vehicles and or pedestrians. That's pretty open-ended and broad. Sounds like we could charge for any time there's a motor vehicle accident or one involving a pedestrian. And so I personally would welcome some refined language narrowing the scope of that rather than us potentially charging any time there is a vehicle accident in our city.
We could put on some additional wording on there to, as I've just stated, that when you have those extenuating circumstances that would lead to a large amount of our time, something that would come from the vehicle that would cause us to get additional services, come and help us with cleanup.
Okay. Yeah. I for one would welcome that. I don't know about fellow commissioners if you'd like that additional clarity or context being provided there as well. Commissioner Hood?
So it's almost like if you're on the highway and you crash through the guardrail, DOT comes out, look at the guardrail, whatnot, and then they charge the insurance company for the repairs. And that's what you're saying when it comes to accidents within the city, maybe?
Correct.
Or require extensive time or response by our
We're having
officers.
extensive time because we have a small portion of the freeway. You know, if we have extensive time, we're closing something just like that. I would say yes, that we would have.
How do we?
Insurance company.
Yeah. So I see the next item here is responding to a grass, rubbish, motor vehicle, aircraft, train, tree, or forest, house, multiple family building, hotel, motel, or another commercial establishment fire. How are we? Because we have some level of cost recovery for responding to fires presently. What is that? What does that entail presently? How does it cover all of that, or is it just specific houses or commercial? And like, is it?
Currently, any type, there's an insured dwelling, there is, I think it's a $10,000, I don't know if I'm using the right word, bond that's sent in that we hold, and we hold until everything's done as far as being able to re-inhabit the space. And if there's any other type of fees that come off of that, then we would deduct that, keep it with the city. I think what you're referencing is, I believe it's a basic $500 charge.
Yep, that's what
Yes.
I'm thinking of.
Right now.
Is that responding to any and all fire response?
Active.
Active. Okay.
Yeah.
Active fires.
Correct.
Responding to an active fire.
Correct.
That's what we'll charge, and it's typically charged to an insurance
Oh, yes.
carrier.
And it comes off of that money that's sent in.
Okay. Responding to a down power line or other non-hazmat public utility hazard response. This seems perfectly acceptable and prudent to me. Responding to a false alarm. So that's. How would that work? So it's a So there's a faulty system, a false alarm we would charge. If someone pulled the fire alarm and there really wasn't a fire or active fire, then we get charged.
Multiple.
What if it's someone that thought there really was a fire? You know, their intent was proper, but it turned out not to be an actual fire. Like, are we going to be charging that person or incident?
Let's say hypothetically, the school, we have reoccurring nighttime false alarms
Yeah.
for fire response. Just documented false alarms for fire response. As the commissioner said, it's 3 or more that we actually send a letter.
Okay.
The city sends a letter when we have these false alarm responses. So that if there is, to try to remind them if there is a fault within your system, you should probably get it repaired because you don't want us to keep responding, then at some point bill you for that. So those would be those situations. I think that the times when you have an accidental pull or a child pull or those type of things, those don't come into play within our system within the city to send out for the false alarm response, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then actually responding to excessive requests for emergency assistance. How are we going to determine that? And maybe this goes to Commissioner Emery's concern about if it's left open-ended and it's not more clearly defined, that it could be subject to biases, whether intentional or otherwise, into what's considered excessive. Like one person, ends up calling 3 times, another person ends up calling 4 times, 5 times, but it's being applied differently. So do we have some kind of framework in mind for excessive, and could we add that in here so it's known, like what constitutes excessive use of? Or I understand maybe you want, not you perhaps, but I can understand why administratively they'd like to have more latitude and discretion. But could you just maybe speak to this and give us more understanding?
I think in my conversations with Attorney Schreier, we wanted to have
That's
that
E, yes.
available. However, with our response to either police or fire services, if there's a mental health situation, we've responded there 20, 30 times. We're looking for response no matter what, even though we know it's a mental health situation, that it's just not going to be any substance to this call. So we're not going to be charging that person for that because we know this mental health matter. Same thing with medicals, repeated medicals, that people just want a transport to a hospital. We realize that. So those are the situations that we're looking at. I think with the discussions I had with John is that we want to be able to have it for those situations that we can document that are pervasive, that don't include those type of areas, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then responding to a bomb threat. So that's anyone that's calling in. That's not whether real or otherwise, anyone reporting a bomb threat. We're going to be charging the person
If there is a
responsible
response.
for the threat or an active situation, if we can arrest them and prosecute them.
If there's an actual bomb threat, though, I can't see charging somebody
Yeah.
all for that. So
Yeah, like the bystander that came upon it versus the person who.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
that one could be tweaked to say that bomb threat proven to be false. I could tweak that if that
Okay.
more specific.
Okay. And then demolition of a structure. So that's anytime our city has to demolish a structure for whatever reason. Like,
Yes, like-
would it be HBA? Like, if we condemn a house to demolish, this gives us that opportunity to recover the cost for demolition of that. Or if there is a house fire and the remains are the structure is unsafe that remains and we have to demolish that gives us an
Yes.
opportunity to recover that
So this
cost.
would be, correct, it would be under a city authority to be able to do that, either through commission authorizing that under a dangerous building, or if there is an unsafe structure that we have to take the safety of the community.
Okay. And then other emergency rescue services. So that would be like responding to someone that might be drowning or a boat capsized or a boat fire. Like what might that encompass? Oh.
Have someone trapped at one of our plants, high angle type situation. Any of these specific situations are going to take us a heck of a lot of time. A low angle rescue, anything that would take us an extraordinary amount of time to be able to our services.
Okay. I guess I would welcome further refinement on that too, just because I certainly don't want to be, if someone is drowning, I don't want us to be charging them, or if there is something more straightforward, I guess. I understand the impetus behind this is that it's something that's going to be taking an excessive amount of time, excessive amount of resources, tying us up and responding, and so we're wanting to, those are going to be unique and relatively rare situations that we want to recover costs. Because I just don't want to be too open-ended, and I understand how, you're bringing this ordinance forward and you're going to be implementing it, initially, but over the years there'll be different administrators, and I guess I personally, the commission may feel differently, but I personally wouldn't want to leave that so open-ended that it could be, I don't want to say abused, but used outside of the scope of what it was originally intended. And then damage to municipal infrastructure, that seems straightforward, but that would be all municipal infrastructure. So if somebody's coming through and vandalizing our playgrounds, we'd be able to, recoup the cost there. All right.
Yes,
I
again.
like that.
Do we do it through the judicial, or are we just gonna do it in-house? That's a little bit, we have to weigh.
Okay.
Yes.
I like that. And then finally, other services not specifically listed that are determined by the Deputy Director of Fire, Public Safety Director, or Public Works Director to be fire protection or other emergency services. And I guess this one is one that I'm not keen on having, period, personally. Again, for the same reason, in the same vein as the concern that Commissioner Emery had conveyed earlier of it, potential for abuse or biases coming into play. Like, it just is too open-ended, and it could be used in a way that the commission or even you right now are envisioning at a future time. So I personally would like to not have that in there, and I'd like just clarity when we're talking about what things can be more clearly defined and what things can have cost recovery and not open-ended. But I'd welcome hearing from the commission. Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I wanted to co-sign about this, Chief, is that it just really protects us and our wonderful police force from someone else misinterpreting or doing or saying something that is unbecoming of the work that you guys do every day. And so as we can more clearly define these, it lessens the risk that could be out there.
I have no problem. I understand your thoughts about that. Leave that out for right now, and then as we
Somebody might try to get them.
Amended and add things that come up. So I feel much more comfortable now having this conversation with this. Coming in tonight, I was a little leery of it, particularly not understanding your expectations with regard to item A and responding to vehicles, because I did not want us to get into a situation that every time we respond to a vehicular accident that we're going to be charging, it's a fender bender or whatnot, like we're going to be charging, someone. I know that there's an exemption for our residents, but I still didn't want us charging guests to our community or people that work in our community, because as we know, there's like 20,000 people that come into our city to work regularly but don't live in the city, and they are paying income taxes as well. And so that was giving me pause. But now that I understand how you anticipate it being applied, and we've talked about further clarifying or refining there, I feel a lot more comfortable moving this ordinance forward. And I appreciate you looking at this, and this aligns with our city's goals of fiscal sustainability and supporting our operations. So I appreciate your work on this and bringing this forward to us. Commissioners, any other questions or thoughts on this item? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Chief Kozel, on item E, the response to excessive request for emergency assistance, you basically stated that that wouldn't apply to people with medical or mental illness conditions. Is that something that need to be actually stated in there, the language that should be added, you think?
When we have these excessive requests, we usually try to work with any of our local services to be able to afford help, either on the mental health services or through medical services. Okay, we try to do that first. We try to exhaust everything we can.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen in my 34 years career, we have actually charged people for excessive, say it, but it just gets to the point where they're just very infrequent. Put more language in there that it does not looking at it for those type of situations.
Mm-hmm. I would kind of feel more comfortable. I think it's more clear and precise. Also, with false alarms, would that include like security alarms on homes and stuff like that as well? Okay.
Any follow-up, Vice Mayor?
No. Thanks.
Any other thoughts? Are we good to move on? All right. Thank you again, Chief Kozel.
Yes.
So next up, we have an amendment to Ride Muskegon agreement coming from our manager's office. Are you reporting out, or is that our deputy manager?
Deputy.
Welcome, welcome.
Oops, sorry about that. I need like so much more room than is available at this. Alrighty, so we were approached by Terry Puffer and his partner Stephen. I can't remember his name.
Karen.
Sorry.
Karen.
Thank you. About this agreement because this agreement got approved quite some time ago, and now they have somebody that they can work with, that they can actually start to implement this. They ran into quite a lot of trouble being able to obtain the scooters, and so that's what has delayed them. But now they've got a way to get them, and sounds like they really think that they can get this thing off the ground. So I just wanted to bring this to all of you to review once more, and I purposely did not put it on the agenda for tomorrow to vote on because I wanted to be able to get your input and have some time to make some changes if necessary, and then have legal review before we bring it to you for with a recommendation and a vote. So one of the things they want to do is, as you might recall, there was a time frame in the agreement where the city was not able to terminate the agreement. It was a 2-year time frame. So that is coming up at December 31st of this year. So what the partners would like to do is change that part of the agreement and allow them a 1-year time frame starting January 1st of 2024, where we would not be able to terminate the agreement. So that's the major change that they're requesting. Secondly, they learned with this new partner that they have that the fee that they had recommended for people parking scooters where they're not supposed to leave them is far too low, and people are just going to dump them all over the place because a $5 fee is no big deal, and they'll be happy to pay that so that they can just leave the scooter wherever they want. So they are also requesting that we update that fee to $50 for each occurrence because they think that will be more of a deterrent. So those are the two main things that they want to change about the agreement. I went through the agreement again and found something in there that I didn't understand when it got approved back in April of 2022. So I was thinking that there was, I knew that there was this exclusivity in the agreement where we were designating these locations where these scooters could be parked, and that there could be no competitor that would be within 500 feet of these locations. So I knew that. I thought that was in the original term, that initial 2-year term, not the entire term of the agreement. And so because I thought that, I was concerned that some of you might have thought that as well. And so I just wanted to bring to your attention again that that exclusivity runs for the entire term of the agreement. And this agreement is renewable, so that could be 25 years. I just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that.
No, we wasn't.
I was, that's why I voted no. Did you have a question, Commissioner Ramsey? I don't want to just keep talking if you guys want to
No.
Yeah,
Did
well, it
it?
sounds like you hit the highlights of the potential changes. Are there any other changes envisioned?
Yeah, so I also asked our attorney to review the agreement again, and he provided me some comments, some other things that we may want to consider. So, things that I hadn't, some things I understood, but some things I hadn't really caught in the previous versions in looking at this. So something to point out, there is a section that talks about the facilities that we are going to be supplying for the operator. And that's essentially these locations for parking the scooters within city property. So I just want to point out that it does include in the agreement already that the city does have the right to alter these facilities upon 60 days notice. So if we find that there's a location that doesn't really seem to be working out very well for the city or maybe surrounding businesses or, whatever the reason is, we do have the ability to change those. And then there are certain situations where we only have to give 7 days notice. I feel like that had to do with maybe special events and things like that. So I just wanted to point out that we do have some flexibility there, that it isn't necessarily carved in stone where these parking locations are going to be. And then there is a portion in the article, so this is where we're talking about the exclusivity, and the agreement essentially says that it's not only another competitor that can't park within 500 feet, but any person who owns an e-bike or an e-scooter also can't park within 500 feet of these parking zones if it's in city property. And I did not notice that before.
No, right?
good.
Come on, Mr. Hood. Yeah, I thought that we went over that when we discussed this, and that we decided that could happen. So are we reading an updated version of the agreement that we, because that is something we absolutely discussed.
This is the executed agreement that that I asked the attorney to review. So
We were very concerned about the other projects that might be going on in town, people owning them, other businesses, whatever it looked like, because we wanted to make sure we were doing right by all of our neighbors. And so we questioned that.
Right.
And said no.
Well, and there had been a change that was made when the questions were first raised, because we were concerned about another local business that was in Lakeside. And so the definition of competitor in this agreement was updated so that that existing local business would not be considered a competitor.
Right.
But there still is language. It says, during the term of this agreement, Muskegon agrees not to authorize any other person to use any designated parking zone or similarly defined space on city property within 500 feet of a zone that's designated for the operator. So it says any other person.
We'll tear it up.
So
Commissioner Hood?
So, this agreement as it stands runs out at the end of this year.
no, it doesn't. What happens at the end of this year is we are finally given the ability as the city to terminate with the proper notice. And before the end of December 31st, we cannot terminate this agreement unless there's breach or something.
Okay, so at the end of December 31st, you're saying we would have to terminate the agreement, or does it come back up for renegotiation?
I don't think that it would come up for renegotiation unless you wanted to renegotiate it.
The agreement automatically renews. So the agreement that was adopted by the commission last year says the agreement of the parties' respective performance will commence on the effective date and continue for a period of 5 years from the effective date unless sooner terminated as provided herein. And that's potential to terminate after December 31st of 2023. And upon expiration of the initial term, this agreement will automatically renew for up to 4 additional 5-year periods. Each 5-year period is a renewal term unless either party provides written notice to the other party of its election not to renew no later than 120 days prior to the expiration of the initial term or a renewal term. So if, under the current agreement as it stands, if the commission or city wanted to terminate it this year, we would need to be given notice pretty darn soon because you have to give. Well, actually, no, we're too late to even if we wanted to terminate this. Say not to start January 1st of 2024. It's too late right now. Does that make sense? Because it needs 120 days.
Because it's not 120 days.
Yeah, but you could still give notice and it would expire at some time in January. But yeah, it's automatic renewal.
Well, with this,
And you have to give 120 days advance
Yeah,
notice.
so
to
then we
terminate.
could have gotten out of all of those automatic renewals with 120-day previous saying we're out. Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But then I have another question when it's
Yes,
you're
Commissioner.
free.
Did you have follow-up, Commissioner Hood?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just because they're asking us to extend this out to switch it to December of 24. So I'm just confused with that.
Yeah.
And with the termination and saying it's too late now to terminate. So I'm confused up in there.
I would want to follow up with the attorney because there's another section where it outlines this December 31st, 2023 date. And in that section, it says we only need to give 90 days notice.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's just for this initial term. I suspect that's the case. But we have to wait until December 31st, 2023 to be able to enact that. Thereafter, I think it would be 120 days. And what is being requested of the commission is that instead of having that December 31st, 2023 date, they want that to be December 31st, 2024. So we wouldn't be able to voluntarily terminate the agreement until a year from then, a year from December 31st, 2023. Does that make sense?
Better. Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Leon, are they in breach of contract at all?
I don't believe so.
So
I mean, it says that they can start, but I don't think there was any mandate that they start.
I'm almost certain we didn't. So we have been waiting on them
Yeah.
this entire time.
And there was no mandate, but I mean, it was this rush.
They've
So
had an exclusive
Right.
opportunity for 2 years
Exactly.
now.
Right, yeah. And so I'm gonna this is why our dear Commissioner Rachel Gorman said, when everything is an emergency, nothing is an emergency.
Yeah.
The Puffers are good friends of mine. I do work with them.
I like Terry too.
But I don't see how this agreement has been beneficial to either of us in the entire time that it's been ticking away. And so I'm not saying that we should not renew another contract moving forward with them, but as far as this contract goes, I would go ahead and, if I was going to do it, I would say, no, thank you, and then renegotiate.
Yeah. Yeah, and last year when this was adopted, I personally didn't like the 2-year exclusive non-termination, and that's where I had preferred a 1 year because then it gave us a season to,
Yeah.
navigate it.
Sure.
And then we'd have some leverage, so to speak, because of the option to terminate after the season to say, hey, this isn't working. This needs to be reworked. This needs to be adjusted. So at least they're coming back here with an amendment of only 1 year, and they haven't implemented it. But I'm just for consistency's sake, because there's certain elements of here that I like and don't like, but for consistency's sake, I did vote no last year on the agreement. And that was just not because of any misgiving with the concept or the business or the people involved with it. It was just a concern of how it ultimately came about, and that this was a no bid contract that we were committing to, and with that exclusivity agreement for potentially so many years. And that's why I had opposed it last year. And just for consistency's sake, on principle, I'm going to continue. So just full disclosure, everyone knows where I'm at. It's not anything to do with the content of the agreement necessarily, because there are some things in there that I do like, or the people involved. It's just the how it ultimately came about. And so that's why, for consistency's sake, I will continue to vote no when this comes to us. Not to say that I oppose the concept. Yes, Commissioner St. Clair.
I also did not vote yes for this. I see no reason to change my vote on that this time around. And in fact, see less reason to vote yes. I did realize that it was exclusive for up to 25 years automatically. I did not realize though that exempted your general public from parking in that space, and that's wildly unacceptable to me.
Indeed.
Because part of my initial concern was how saturated it was going to be. There are so many on the map that we were given. There are so many locations from downtown to Pier Marquette that it really would effectively strangle anyone else from bringing any similar business, which I understand was the point, but for it to be a non-competitive process that automatically renews, when there was already another business in town who would have liked a bite at the apple. I could not support it, and I see nothing to change my mind now.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Before I go back to you, Commissioner Ramsey, I just want to see if there's anyone on this side, Commissioner Gorman, Commissioner Emery, or Vice Mayor
I want to
Chairman.
hear what.
What?
Okay, I just.
Well, I know I'm going to get to them, but it's customary that we allow everyone to have one opportunity to ask and provide input before going back. So I just want to give.
He can go first.
You want to defer to him,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German? Do you want to
Yeah,
chime in now, or do you want to?
Well, just a quick question for Deputy Manager. That on item B, designated parking zone usage restriction, and that could be, it basically says any other person's company or competitor. So a visitor or tourist could just come in with an e-bike, and that restricts them from even parking in that zone. That's basically what that's saying, correct?
And within 500 feet of it.
500 feet within that zone, yeah.
That's correct.
And that's not fair at all. No.
Pretty expensive.
I wanted to give some context too. I did look around the city a little bit, and our city blocks range from about 300 feet to 700 feet long. So just to give you some context for what 500 feet might be, about a block away.
Would you like the
No one
mayor
could
to
park within a
measure
block.
out 16 feet for
All right.
No follow-ups, no.
All right, Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, so
Thank you for your patience.
of course, thank you, and both Commissioner St. Clair for entertaining the levity in which the statement is being made. Since we're all giving disclaimers about our last vote, when we went into the last vote, my biggest concern was the business out of Lakeside, and as soon as the business from Lakeside stood up and said we're okay, and we were okay with Terry, except for the two. In case you guys aren't aware, the mayor and Commissioner St. Clair both voted no. Welcome to Monday. It's just us. So I was okay with it. I did not realize that the automatic renewal was a thing, but I also was not concerned about that because you guys are good at your jobs. Like, that's not something that would concern me, because we need to renegotiate, we need to renegotiate. I do not like, and Commissioner St. Clair was way more eloquent than I would be about the 500-foot thing, so I support that and co-sign that. But I think that we need to renegotiate, and unless we can have something that looks more friendly to our neighbors and our local economy, I would not support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gorman, do you have anything to ask or add at this time? Yeah. Commissioner Emery, do you have anything to ask or add at this time?
Yeah, I do now. I did vote yes to this, and that was because Lake Effect was for it.
They okayed it.
And I looked right at her that night, and she just said this, and so. But since then, I have discussed this with her, and she's had time to reflect and play it all back again, and look at it, how it is going to affect her business, and it has, or it will. So she's changed her tune, so to speak. I'm having a hard time with this because I remember that night, and as we all do, but we were told they already purchased the bikes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
They were in a
that
storage
they
shop
spent,
somewhere.
right?
Yeah.
That they spent
$100,000
over
on them.
$100,000 on it, and they needed a chance to recoup their money. And I, as a former business owner, I said, every business wants to recoup their money. And I felt like we were being rushed and pushed into making this decision. And so now that Andrea has had time to reflect and change her mind and rethink about it, I have done the same and will not support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Given the information that was brought before the commission at that point in time, and casting the votes to approve this, and with the intent that the business would be ready for operation and to proceed, and that, as Commissioner Emery stated, the other business owner was basically okay with this business and basically kind of supported it at that time. That was my reasoning for actually voting in favor for it. But now that this has been brought in front of the commission and more clarity has been addressed, I guess going back to the contract for termination, which we still have that option, right? For the end of this year. Is this something that terminating the contract and then renegotiating the contract would be in the best interest of renewing it, or what?
That's possible. My next question to all of you is going to be, okay, hearing the concerns, would you prefer that we start renegotiating with them? If we're generally supportive of this concept, should we start trying to negotiate with the operators again, in light of the concerns that you've given us, and maybe bring something different back to you?
And just one.
So,
Okay.
in terms of mechanics, what I want to understand is what you're saying: negotiate an amendment to the existing agreement, or submit notice of intent to terminate, and then work to negotiate a new agreement to be brought forward separate from this. Because right now they have an agreement and they could move forward implementing it. So you're suggesting the latter, that we would, if the commission wishes to take the direction to terminate it, submit notice of termination, and it does have that clause for December 31st of 2023, only needing 90 days. So we're still within that window. We could submit that notice, have it terminate by the end of this year or at the end of this year, and then start anew.
I guess I don't have a strong preference. I brought this item to you because the operators want to amend the contract, so I'd be fine with just taking the items that we're discussing right now and including those in the amendment. But I'm also fine with the direction with terminating and starting back up if that's the direction that you all are more comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Without anyone feeling like I'm passing judgment on them, I also recall there being an emergent situation because there was stock on hand of the
Carrying costs.
the little toys we were all going to pay to ride with our phones. And if that's not the case because it's been 2 years, I would really support terminating the contract as we have it, period, and starting from zero. In fact, I think that's the only way that I would support anything.
Commissioner Hood.
I agree with that. I mean, we were rushing because they said they had already had the bikes, they already had this thing in place, and time was of the essence. And I didn't want to hold that up. But at this time and point, I moved to the termination and then renegotiate.
I found that perplexing as well. Hearing last year that the equipment had already been acquired, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent, and then seeing in the communications to you that there were delays in acquiring them. And so that's why it wasn't implemented. So I was confused by that, the difference there. The befuddling. So I would support termination. I mean, I think that's probably a given that since I didn't support voting for the original agreement, I think it's probably a given that I would support terminating it at the same time. But any other thoughts or questions, commissioners?
Okay.
Vice Mayor German.
Now, renegotiating this contract with them, and Commissioner Emery expressed interest from the other party. Would that allow this other party to be a player in the attempt to bring their business in?
I mean, they could do that at any time. They don't need to
Okay.
wait for us to have an agreement or amend an agreement or terminate an agreement. They can reach out to us to try to put together an agreement on their own at any time.
And the reason I asked is because of the in item B, it talks about the competitors and stuff like that. But that's dealing with the zone parking. But it doesn't exclude the opportunity for other business owners to make a proposal to have a business.
It
in
does.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Not
Wait.
not lake effect, because they were specifically
were
noted in
lake
this
effect,
contract
not-
as
Okay.
not being a competitor.
Okay. That's,
Yeah.
okay.
But anybody else
somebody
besides
else
Lake
Lake
Effect.
effect. Okay.
would be excluded.
Would be excluded.
Have we been approached?
The other thing, for all of us to keep in mind, is that they or anyone else can still operate in the city on private property. This agreement is for regulating use of city public properties and being able to stage these on public properties and have an exclusive area on public properties. So they could continue, even if this agreement's terminated and we don't ever do one, they can continue. They could implement their business model within the city as long as it's adhering to our zoning and our code of ordinances. They could operate within the city as any other business could as well. So I just wanted everyone to understand that this. Okay,
Yeah,
Commissioner
Mr.
Rand.
Mayor, I would invite them to do that and would support that wholeheartedly. I have one question that I don't know, it now seems relevant because of the conversation that the Vice Mayor just brought up. Has anyone else approached us in the last, is it almost 2 years?
Year and a half since the
In the
In the
agreement
last
was
year and a half since we
approved.
approved this and have had no scooters, that's what they are, they're scooters. Are
Scooters,
they
yeah.
scooters?
Yeah.
Scooters on the streets. Has any other business and or approached us to do something similar, that this exclusivity agreement has kept us from entering into another agreement with someone else?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. So it's not hindered us, it just clearly hasn't helped.
One has come in to operate, but it was not in agreement with the city, and they also were not functioning well because their scooters all over the place and not retrieving them
Gotcha.
in an orderly manner.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I just
littering.
wanted to know if this had kept us from any other lucrative business deals.
Yeah, I would say that from my perspective, if we're going to be using public facilities or public properties for private enterprise, then we should be making that available on a bid or RFP basis. Like, it should be opened up to any other business to apply for this or submit a proposal for this. And so if we are going to be terminating this and renegotiating with the company that already had this, it is just reinforcing that non-competition. And who we've already established may have not fully informed us on some aspects of that, so it almost feels like we're rewarding. I don't want to say they're deceiving us, but
No.
we were given information at one point that conflicts with information now.
Yes.
And so I personally, given that this is talking about this particular agreement, is talking about providing exclusive access to public facilities, and pretty substantial too, at least presently 500 feet. If we as a city want to do that with any company, then we should be making that opportunity publicly available for people to bid on it or submit a proposal for it, and then enter into negotiations of an agreement. That's my perspective, and I certainly appreciate and respect anyone that has a differing perspective, but I just want to share my position on that.
So I don't not agree with you, but I do think that could get hairy if we're talking about private business. You guys are going to have to forgive me because I'm not as eloquent as all of you finance people. But I feel like that could get really hairy if we're talking about private enterprise, right? We're not coming in to have them build a bunch of infill housing. And while I know that it's the same, it is still different. And so in my head, we could mitigate that in a good way by being business partners. And is there a payoff for the city that they're using these, our property to park these scooters on? Because then that's a private business deal, right? And we do stuff like that all the time. But I think that if we are going to just blanket offer anything with no financial benefit or some other benefit clearly outlined of our city for our neighbors, that there should be an RFP process, even if it's one person's idea. Well, we love this, but if you want us to donate something to you, then we have to offer that same opportunity to other people who might want to do that. Slap a dollar amount on it, and I'd be a lot easier with exclusivity if it's, beneficial in a respectful way for everybody involved. But I don't disagree with you. I just feel like there's a, that. Everything I just said, I'm not going to repeat it because that's ridiculous in what I do.
There
We
is
both do that sometimes, just to reinforce or explain things a little bit differently, like than we did the first time. To try to maybe reinforce understanding. Yes.
So I would absolutely love to see another proposal from them that looks completely different.
There is a provision in this agreement that does have a fee that gets paid to the city. So each time a scooter bike is unlocked, there's a 25-cent fee, and that gets collected and then it gets sent to us monthly. So there is some provision for payment in here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it sounds to me like I heard the majority of you would like to terminate the agreement.
I think there's consensus for termination. I don't know what the consensus is for
Yes.
how to proceed post termination.
Oh.
But certainly I think there's consensus to serve notice of termination. Commissioners, do you feel comfortable with providing positions on where you stand in terms of how to proceed post termination, or is this something that you want to reflect on further, dialogue with staff, and we can either revisit this at a future work session or LPC meeting or something, or we can have those conversations with staff and they can kind of
We could.
deem consensus from us.
Yeah, we could certainly look at other communities to see what they have done.
Love that.
Yeah.
Some more.
Yes.
I'm in
All right.
agreement.
Any final thoughts, questions, concerns, comments? Nope. All right. Well,
Great.
thank you for
Yeah,
your work
thank
on
you.
this,
Yeah.
Deputy Manager.
You're very welcome.
Next up, rezoning update. Our planning manager, Mike Franzik. Welcome.
Evening.
Good evening.
Just wanted to share an update where we're at with the rezoning efforts. At Planning Commission in September on the 14th, we will be proposing to rezone all the properties zoned R1, R2, R3, and RT in McLaughlin, Angel, and Jackson Hill neighborhoods to form-based code urban residential. We've sent out the notices. It's on track to go to the public hearing this Thursday. But we don't want to stop there. I just wanted to give an update about the housing choice efforts we're going to be looking at across the city. The reason we picked these 3 neighborhoods so far is because we've already done so much public outreach. And, we've had this public engagement over the past few years, really since 2018 with the expansion in Nelson. And in meeting with these neighbors and neighborhoods, we often do make changes to the code so it fits better. During Nelson, we took the small multiplexes from a maximum of 6 units down to 4 units. That was very helpful meeting with the neighbors. I think in the coming years, we even decided that alleys were appropriate for these types of units. So we put a clause in there to only allow them if you have an alley. So we want to meet with these other neighbors and neighborhoods to go over, how they feel about this and how it would work in their neighborhoods. And the answer might not always be form-based code. The form-based code works very well with these downtown neighborhoods because not just for the housing choice, but the development standards on where you can place the building on the lot on these compact lots. As we get further away from downtown, some of the lot sizes change, and some of these neighborhoods don't have a lot of alleys, and some of the housing really doesn't fit in with the design standards of the downtown neighborhoods. So we want to work with these neighborhoods on the best approach to getting housing choice, and that may be as simple as amending the single-family zoning ordinance to allow for different types of houses. So we feel comfortable that we've done the outreach with these 3 neighborhoods, and I do have this printout that you've all received in your packets about how we would move forward. We want to meet with the NIMS and the Lakeside next before the end of the year. We already have a Lakeside form-based code, and we did have some expansions of the downtown form-based code into Campbell Field recently. So we want to start working with them on a complete rezoning, if possible, here and before the end of the year. Also, Beechwood Bluffton, we've been getting a lot of calls from some of the residents in this area saying that they do want housing choice, so we would like to start working with them on how that would look. If you look at the actual Bluffton neighborhood, a lot of those streets really mimic some of our downtown blocks, so that could fit in very well. But when you get into more of the suburban type areas, those design standards might not fit in as well with some of those neighborhoods. So we want to look at what type of approach we would have to bring that housing choice. Glenside, Marquette, and Steele are all very similar neighborhoods, and that's another one we would like to see. There's still some vacant lots in Marquette, and we have some developers that are interested in building some duplexes in that area, so we would like to meet with them before the end of 2023. And then probably what we've done the least outreach on is Sheldon Park, Oakview, Marshfield, and East Muskegon. So maybe around early 2024, we can start working with those neighborhood associations and educating them on this process and how it could look. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this is not just that we have a housing shortage, but the Bowen National Research document, the Housing Needs Assessment, states that we need about 3,000 housing units over the next 5 years. So I think everybody can agree we need to add housing to these neighborhoods. And one of the biggest pushbacks we've gotten from some of the public is, well, what are you going to do to stop gentrification? This is the answer. We need the housing. The worst thing a community can do when developing a neighborhood to cause gentrification is single-family zoning. And we have over 100 years of case study to go off of all across America. So we don't have to read this now. It's just a brief 2.5 pager, but everybody wants to take a look at this after the meeting. This is from the White House official website on the effects of exclusionary zoning and its effects on racial discrimination in the housing market. One thing I do want to point out, exclusionary zoning laws place restrictions on the types of homes that can be built in a particular neighborhood. Common examples include minimum lot size requirements, minimum square foot requirements, and prohibitions on multiple family houses. We've already tackled the first 2, and we already see that it's paying great dividends. We've created a lot more buildable lots. We found housing styles that fit on these lots, and we have new families moving into these neighborhoods. But so far, most of these neighborhoods are restricted to single-family homes. And we know that with more choice comes more housing options and more affordability. So this is where we're at, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Michael. Great job. I also want to thank you for getting up here and really just speaking in plain English about what we need and why we need it, and letting our neighbors know that if they have questions that they can come to you and you will have this same conversation with them. That this is not a sleight of hand, this is not a bait and switch. This is not the situation that a lot of our neighbors have been afraid of for years, because guess what? We are not those people. And so I just want to thank you and commend you and the entire team around the work that you continue to do.
Thank you.
In housing and promoting how we can all come together to build community together.
Thank you. And I'd just like to reiterate, this is not coming from the mind of Mike Franzak. This is not my idea.
No.
This is generally accepted good planning practices that's being done across the country where they want to eliminate this exclusionary zoning practices. So I can't take credit for it. It's not my invention, but I do see that it's working across the country, and we want to bring that here.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Director Francis. And I like the fact that you stated that these ideas are not coming from you. Because as a commissioner, when I make decisions or look at things and from other histories, you know, that reflect on situations that has happened in the past and continue to affect us in the future, it lets us know that it's not our driven agenda. It's something that's needed for the community. So, but as you talk about the Angel McLaughlin and Jackson Hill, which is specifically the ward that I oversee, and the major concerns, and I've talked about this, probably 7-8 years before gentrification became a common conversation here on this commission, and due from some of the studies that was done, the one on the Jackson Hill at that time, and the ones with Mr. Alexis that the commission was invited to through the neighborhood groups, he said that there can be some restrictions added within these foreign-based codes. What restrictions, or have you considered any type of restrictions that will impact the community in a positive way when we talk about changing and rezoning, how it would protect residents that's already in the community? And I just give one out, for instance, what I hear from the residents there in the Jackson Hill, Angel, all of them are not opposed of change, but they're afraid of being pushed out, priced out due to the mass development. And I'm asking two questions at the same time almost. The first one would be a restriction on, say, houses built on these empty lots. Could a restriction be put in place where they're not as close and maybe allowed 20 feet from the next residence? That conversation have came up to me. Also, when it comes to the change in the rezoning, how does the inspection requirements affect people in older homes? Just say, for instance, it may be for the new homes that's being built, well, they have to be in compliance with such and such code, this and that. And a person has a home that's 70 years old, will that affect them? And that due to the rezoning, how does that impact residents that's already grandfathered into that neighborhood with those older homes?
Well, the first question, I think I alluded to it earlier, is what protections have been put in place. Is we came out with this code in 2015, and we don't go to these neighborhood associations just to pay lip service. We actually work with them, and we try to amend the code to help it fit in that specific neighborhood. So we've already made changes. We've decreased the maximum size of a small multiplex to 3 or 4 units. We've then changed it to say you also have an alley, so there's not parking congestion. There's not trash receptacles everywhere. There's a place for everything in the back. So we've done those things. Now the setback requirements change a little bit with form-based code, but not much. In the form-based code, a side yard setback can be as close as 5 feet. In a single-family zone, it's 6 feet. It's not much difference. When you start to see these neighborhoods develop, you are going to, there's some examples in the Planning Commission packet coming out that's on the website now, and that will be in the packet on the second meeting this month, that shows pictures of missing middle housing next to single family housing. And when it's done right, you can't tell the difference between them just looking at the street. It's going to fit into the neighborhood. A 4-unit house is going to look very similar to a single-family house that is sitting right next to it. In some instances, it may be even smaller. So we feel, from a design standpoint, we've already tackled that. So I'm very comfortable with that. As far as the inspections question, they're going to have to follow the same building codes as anybody. If somebody wants to put an addition on their single-family home, they're going to have to go through the International Building Code and follow those rules, which we follow. That would be the same thing if they want to build a duplex. There's a set of rules that they have to follow, and this rezoning it to form-based code really should not have any effect on grandfathered properties.
And because that's one of the biggest concerns that I hear, and that's probably some of the major pushbacks that you would get back from people that I've talked to in the community when it comes to making this presentation for changing rezoning.
Yeah. And one positive thing, a major positive thing that's going to come out of this is the chance to build generational wealth. That's something we hear a lot of. Mm-hmm. If you have a single family home and you want to make some extra income, you can develop an accessory dwelling unit, a grandmother flat in the back, which is just an extra unit where a garage would be, or above the garage. And you can rent that out and subsidize your mortgage or make additional income. So it's a real chance for property owners who live in this neighborhood already to have a chance at building generational wealth.
Now, just thinking back, I was at a couple of conferences a few weeks ago, and we talked about the housing crisis. I mean, it's all over the United States. I visited Boston. I mean, not Boston, but Baltimore, St. Louis, Missouri, and one of the speakers said public input and the neighbors, like we go out and talk to the residents to see what they want, and they should be part of the planning process also, because they're the ones that's actually living in the community, opposed to department heads, which will guide the process. But you don't live in those areas. Some of you don't even come to those areas unless it's a meeting, or you hold a town hall meeting or something like that. So yes, you can come and have one meeting, but do you really know what that community needs? Because the needs for certain communities are different from others. The plan sounds good, but again, home ownership is important, generational wealth, being able to have affordable housing and attainable housing. How will this benefit the community, such as these houses will be affordable for them to live there? Again, people are getting, and I walk the community, I knock on doors, and I've talked to people that are actually being pushed out due to the development in the Nelson area. And all of that development, all that infill housing, landlords are raising rents, and people are being pushed out and priced out. So what restrictions can we put in place to assure that this doesn't happen in these other three communities that you're looking to allow these developers to come in and build and develop? Because we have not had any investment in these communities for over probably 30 plus years or better. Now they want to come in, and which is a good opportunity to just develop and make money, but at the expense of people being pushed out, priced out, and then gentrifying the area.
Yeah. So as I stated, we have a severe housing shortage.
Yeah.
We are going to be building houses, not just us. Private development is going to be building houses. When you only introduce one type of housing into that neighborhood, you're pricing people out. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can afford a single family house. Right. When you build a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, it brings the prices down. The best thing we can do for affordability and keeping people from being priced out of their neighborhoods is to eliminate single family zoning.
And this form-based code with,
Yes, and I almost want to get away from the word form-based code because it seems like a word that scares people. It's really about the housing choice. The form-based code is a fancy word for design guidelines, for the most part. The real key to it is the housing choice and the ability to build different types of housing, to build them more affordable, to keep the neighborhood more affordable. When you introduce only single-family zoning, and yeah, Nelson did get rezoned several years ago, but most of the houses being built are single-family.
yeah.
We need the option to build more types of housing units.
Okay, now.
And
I'm sorry.
We can
I
get back
keep
to
that
you.
thought. I
We can
keep
get
that
back
thought.
to
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Adjournment, but I want to give the other commissioners an opportunity to ask questions and provide
Thank
any
you.
input. Commissioner Emery, do you have anything to ask or add at this time? Commissioner St. Clair, Commissioner Hood, do you have anything to add or ask at this time?
No.
All right.
Sorry.
Because I see Commissioner Ramsey, so I'm going to call on him in a second, but I want to give an opportunity for Commissioner Gorman if you have anything to ask or add. All right. Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah, no, I was going to respond to the vice mayor, but Michael actually did a great job in doing so. And while I don't agree with us wanting to get away from the term form-based code, because that is also something that scares people when we change up language that they're completely not aware of. It looks like we're trying to put a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's not the gig. But you made great points about, and so did the vice mayor, about the disinvestment in that community. But for us to begin to reinvest, we have to look at every opportunity. And while we understand that no one in a neighborhood wants to live next to what they identify as the projects, which has historically and traditionally happened in poor black areas, period. That is true. That is not what this is about. This is about offering affordable options that don't look like one big house, like the one that I live in, that takes up a quarter of a city block. Like, that's not real for all people. I got mine for a song and a dance because it was before we had a crisis and before the boom. So I think that it's important when we talk about form-based code as guidelines to how we build, that those are rooted in safety and that stuff is important. But as we talk about being able to offer options for every type of person who wants to be in that neighborhood, that's where it starts. Otherwise, Vice Mayor, they can only come in and build single-family homes.
Yeah.
And you have to have so much money just to buy the wood. Turns out right now. So I think that your question was awesome. Thank you for answering it. And I think that, or asking it. And I think that Michael did a great job in talking about it offering so many opportunities. But we automatically go to high-rise, poor people housing projects. And that is not what this is about. Sorry if that was a little passionate. I just think that was a great interaction.
Well, and to make sure that everyone understands that at home, watching this, that this particular context area, urban residential, for the form-based code, is only up to quads, 4
Yes,
units.
yeah, so there's a max.
Single family, duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes
Right.
is what's envisioned in the
So-
urban residential context area.
Yes, and so I also want to comment on something that the vice mayor said about what guidelines are we putting in, and I don't think that it's we put in guidelines. Is that we set it up from from point blank, right? You can still build a single family home. You can still build a duplex or a threeplex or a quadplex so that all of those price ranges are fit. But like the mayor said, you can't go any higher than 4. And also something that we can leverage, Vice Mayor, is as we're going to have all of these this new housing in those neighborhoods, how do we then leverage that to get an update for infrastructure in those neighborhoods when they're when they're tearing up those streets to put in new sewers and power lines? How are we also saying from the seat that we have here, what else are you improving if you have it already torn up? How are we looking into DPW and Dan and putting pressure on him to be able to do other things that need to happen in these neighborhoods because of this new build? And while I'm not advocating, I don't need a response from anyone else. I am saying to the vice mayor, does this give us something to use?
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Before I go to Commissioner Emery, Director Echolm, could you weigh in on our home infill program thus far, and insofar as it relates to zoning?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sure, I can do that. So, obviously, head of Development Services Division, I'm in favor of everything that Director Franzek has already said. But one of the things I think is important for context as relates to our infill housing, as you know, the city of Muskegon is a leader in the state of Michigan for purpose-built publicly funded owner-occupied homes, and so that's a good thing. We're starting to generate enough interest that private sector folks are buying houses from us to build houses in our community, which is a great thing because that was not a commonplace occurrence for a couple decades now. So you can look at the data and what those homes are being marketed for, and see that they are generating larger sale prices when they're privately sold, privately bought. Great example. So we have 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes for sale in the Jackson Hill Marquette submarket of the study, and the most expensive one we've sold was $220 with $6,000 in seller concessions, so $214,000. Every house that I have sold a lot to someone for them to construct a new home, and they've sold, has sold for $275,000. So we're talking about 60 grand plus of additional price when it's sold privately. Part of the reason that those homes are being marketed at those price points, and I'm not disparaging those price points. If you recall your copy of the study, we need those houses. We need pretty much every price point. We have a unique opportunity in these particular neighborhoods where we've proposed to start looking at housing choice zoning because we have the most available vacant lots that are city owned. And so I have an opportunity as sort of, gaming out our infill housing to kind of control our destiny on, okay, what goes on these lots? And if I want to sell a lot to a private developer to build an owner-occupied structure, right now that person can't do anything but a single-family home. We are actually working right now with folks from the Angel neighborhood who are both individuals of color who want to buy some lots from us and build homes, and they wanted to build several triplexes, and they couldn't because of the existing zoning. And so they're waiting to see what happens with this outcome. And so if I were to sell it to them as it is today, without really finagling the existing zoning, they would not be able to get as many units. They could get up to twice as many housing units on the same 3 lots as what they could on the existing zoning. So if I want to encourage a market that allows private sector folks to get the return they need and still build something other than single family homes, which is not right for everybody. Not everybody can bear that cost, and everybody needs that housing product. We need to consider these things because I can show you the data between what's sold privately and what we sell through our infill housing efforts, and you're seeing a tens of thousands of dollars difference. So that's important to recognize as we have this conversation. And it's Director Franzek's item, but I'm happy to entertain any questions on the infill housing side.
Thank you, Director Ekholm. Commissioner Emery, is it related to the home infill? Your question or comment?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was going to say, before I get to you, I'd welcome any other questions pertaining to this particular topic. But
Oh, no.
if
Yeah.
yours is also pertaining to this, then the floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. One of the things that Vice Mayor German brought up was that, and I think maybe Director Franzek can help him reassure him of this. Nobody is going to go into anyone's home in Jackson Hill or anywhere else without permission and say, now you got to change out this bathroom faucet or change out the linoleum or your carpeting is worn. And that's what I felt like that your constituents have a fear of.
I can speak to that if you like.
Okay, yeah, I can speak. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I think an earlier question that Vice Mayor German posed, I believe Director Franzek answered, but I would reiterate. So if a zoning overlay, an area of the city, the zoning changes, even if the house you have now, which a lot of the houses in this area are pre-1970 construction, built on narrower lots, quite frankly, most of those houses are not compliant with the current setbacks and zoning. Maybe not most, but a good number are not compliant with the zoning that sits over them right now. And we've never gone to anybody's house and said, well, the zoning's not, relative to your house, so you have to pick your house up and move it. That's not what we do. It's an existing non-conforming use. So in the event we make this change and there are some folks whose houses don't technically fit the zoning, which only speaks to the location on the lot and what type of product can be put on the lot, the use type. But it's not as though people who have older homes or less expensive homes are going to suddenly have all these new criteria that they must meet for that existing unit. That's not how we regulate zoning. So nobody will come to their house with a clipboard and be checking boxes to see do you comply with this new zoning? That's not the case. So I think Director Franzek made a good point that in the event somebody wanted to put like an addition on their house, right? So they will have to meet the relevant setbacks of the zoning as it exists, but that would be true today too. And so they have zoning setbacks that they would have to meet today, the same way they would have zoning setbacks that they would need to meet under this form-based code designation. The difference is this allows for more types of additions on the lot. So uses by right that you currently don't have under the existing zoning. So another great example would be right now in Jackson Hill, in Angel, in McLaughlin, there are many houses that were constructed as single-family homes that have been carved up into duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and through what I would argue is maybe under-regulation in our past, we have let that happen and has at times led to substandard housing units. And so, but right now today, if, any investor that we work with right now, I can think of an example who's from that neighborhood. Richard Thrower has for years wanted to build duplexes, triplexes in those neighborhoods, and he cannot build purpose-built new construction duplexes and triplexes that meet the contemporary construction code because of the zoning. So we have them right now that have been sort of retrofitted that way, but he can't build purpose-built multifamily housing. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And we've had that conversation where we talked, I think, a couple weeks ago, and you kind of gave some details in the importance of your pursuit to push the foreign-based rezoning. And as Commissioner Emery brought up, the concern is to protect these people in these neighborhoods because, as you stated, some investors have homes that they did, at that time carve up to make 2 units and stuff like that, but at the same time they fear the inspections, and we contract with Safe Built, and I'm getting called out, and I look at some of these homes, and some of them are in excellent condition, but the inspections and the citations that they're getting, they said they don't match up to the codes, and I've even had to bring in contact the city manager in the past about some of the complaints, and I find it disturbing that the same thing is happening repeatedly to a couple individuals. So that's the concern, protecting these individuals and these citizens that's already has property, and that we don't price them out or gentrify them out by just slapping, tickets and citations on them, because some of them may get fed up and can't afford to make those improvements, and then they, lose their homes.
Sure. Yeah, and I want to make it very clear. I can't speak to the specific issues. Inspections is in a different division than the one I administer here. I can look you in the eye and tell you with confidence that a change to be more inclusive in our zoning will not exacerbate issues with existing housing stock as it pertains to inspections. Because it has zero bearing on rental inspection, it has zero bearing on construction code, all that stuff exists with or without this zoning change. So this will not impact those issues.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Emery, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, can you define, and it might sound like a stupid question, but define additional housing choices?
It's not a stupid question. I'll try not to sound stupid when I answer it.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we mean by housing choice is, again, just use by right of more types of housing product on a lot. And so that can mean, a smaller minimum lot size to build a single-family home. I own a 33-foot lot that I inherited from my mom's side of the family, and I live in another state now, but I want to move back to this Muskegon. Maybe I'll build a house on that lot. In a lot of these zoning designations that exist today, I cannot build on that lot. And so that makes it difficult, where we could have a new housing product there and we don't. The other side of housing choice is unit count. So again, I have a 50-foot lot and I want to build a triplex because I've figured it out with my bank that the projected cash flow from having 2 rental units plus my own unit that I pay the note on for the triplex, they'll lend to me if I can do that, but the zoning precludes me from doing that. So housing choice really means giving more living options on a piece of property. And so Director Franzak very correctly mentioned earlier accessory dwelling units. So I have an elderly parent and I can't afford or otherwise don't want to put them in a professional care facility, but they can't age in their home anymore. I'd like to build a small detached backyard unit that has utilities, studio apartment basically in my backyard. The current zoning precludes them from doing that. This zoning would allow folks to do that. So whether that's converting an existing structure that must meet the existing building code or constructing something new that must meet the existing building code.
Thank you.
While we have Director Eckham up here, Commissioners, do you have any other questions as it relates to the housing infill programs that we have? Commissioner St. Clair?
I'm gonna ask you to speculate wildly, but we're disclaiming that this is speculation. Do you see any way out of our current housing crisis if we do not pursue changes in our code and our zoning?
I can give you a short answer and a medium answer. I'll start with the medium answer. I want to make it clear that we could approve a rezoning to form-based code for the entire city tomorrow and increase housing choice on every lot, and we still do not have enough publicly held land to fix the gap that we've got. And so it's going to take private sector investment, continued public investment in housing, and these types of housing policy changes. In the October work session, I'll be presenting. We finished all of our outreach to all of our submarkets, and we've consolidated all the comments and feedback we've gotten. I'll be giving a presentation based on what we heard and then some policy recommendations. This is one of several. So this is part of a suite of policy recommendations we're going to be making over the next 2 quarters to kind of put us in the best position to address this gap. The short answer is no, there is no reality where we keep the existing zoning and we create enough opportunity for units on our vacant property to adequately address this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Any other questions, Director Eckham, before I ask our zoning administrator to return to the podium? No? All right. Yeah, something else from Director Eckham?
Director Eckham, just to let him know, I sent you some photos of a development area that I just went to and visit last month.
You sent me some photos.
I just sent them to you.
Oh, okay.
I texted them to you.
Oh.
So, and you talked about the different units, and that neighborhood was actually one that was redeveloped and rezoned. So, but there actually are some restrictions put in place where it protects the people in that community and the former residents. So, and that's what I was looking at to see how. Taking this approach for rezoning, how it protects the residents in their communities and homeowners, and that's a major concern for me.
I appreciate that, Vice Mayor, and I think we share that concern. We've been kind of saying for a couple of years now that this economic gentrification is happening. There's a shortage of units. My own family members who rent, they've seen 50% increases, 100% increases in rent. There was the only private multifamily development in Glenside recently was purchased, and then within 3 months there was a $300 rent increase. And so those are challenging things for folks around here they're working class folks, which is a huge cohort of our community. And we all, for the most part, grew up here and know that. And so that's exactly what we're working to try to take the pressure off of. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and one last question, Mayor Matt.
I'd like to go to Commissioner Hood, but I'll circle back with you real quick.
I just wanted to add, and I thought I saw that there's a bill coming out where they're trying to take away the rent cap.
Oh, they're trying to impose rent control. Yeah.
Right, trying to take it away, right?
Well, no, they're trying to implement rent control, which would establish rent caps. Yeah. Basically setting a limit on what can be.
Right now it's illegal to have rent caps.
Yeah. Right now, the state of Michigan is one of 43 states that specifically precludes rent control by statute. So they're looking to undo that and institute rent control at the state level.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, last question. Okay, also, what I would like to see, and when we talk about equity and the opportunity for equity and equality, when we talk about these homes that's being built from all price points, and supposedly they're going to be affordable, I like to look at the demographics. The groups that are actually able to afford these homes. And these communities, you're coming into a community that has no investment in, like I said, 30 plus years. Drug infested, blight, all that's been cleaned up in the last 12 years that I've served here on this commission. And now that we have the opportunity to make a difference and make a change, it is definitely essential that individuals who have lived in that community or want to live in that community have an opportunity to purchase a home or live in that community. So if we have a breakdown in single mothers, ethnic groups, I think that data will help reflect that this foreign-based change or zoning is working for everybody. So that's something that we can get, to the commission once this goes into effect, or if it goes into effect.
So we keep what data we can actively with our ARP infill housing. We have a sheet that our realtors provide to the buyer's agent. We have to be very cautious with the Fair Housing Act because there's some things we're just blatantly not allowed to ask as a seller. And so we have that data as it pertains to area median income range, and so by household. Some folks have volunteered to provide other demographic data as well, so we do have that, and periodically we can share that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Eckham.
Thank you, Director Eckham.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Zoning Administrator Franzik. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Franzik? Thoughts? Commissioner St. Clair.
I think that it is in your synopsis here, but I cannot remember. You had a timeline for rolling out potential zoning changes in the rest of the city in here.
Yes. Yeah, it's on this one pager.
Okay. All right, I have too many tabs open and now I can't find it anymore. Can you just speak a little bit to that for the people that don't have it in front of them? We
Sure.
do have some people watching.
Yep. So McLaughlin, Angel, and Jackson Hill, we're proposing September 14th, the public hearing. We believe the next neighborhood that's already seen this type of rezoning we would like to bring to next. We want to go back to these neighborhoods that already have some of this form-based code, but work with them on the outrolling of that. That would be Nims and Lakeside. We would like to work with them before the end of this year. The same thing with Campbell Field. They also have some two small areas that were zoned to form-based code. We see some townhomes and duplexes have already gone up, and we did not have much opposition in Campbell Field. We're looking to meet with them by the end of the year as well. So we think all three of these are completely doable to meet with them and propose a rezoning before the end of the year. I think Beechwood and Bluffton is probably going to take a little bit more time. We see more people coming around to the idea, but it's something we really haven't explored much yet. So we really want to talk to the people first, and just like we did it with Nelson, and we tweaked the code so it could fit in well with that neighborhood. Same thing with Lakeside. We actually created its own form-based code. So that's something we could do for other neighborhoods or different context areas to existing form-based codes that will work well with different neighborhoods. Glenside, Marquette, and Steele. We also believe we can meet with them by the end of the year to at least get the ball rolling on the discussions and attend their neighborhood association meetings. And Sheldon Park, Oakview, Marshfield, and East Muskegon, we would like to meet with them as well, but that's probably going to have to be pushed to the early part of 2024.
Okay. So we're looking at a fairly short amount of time in between each of these steps. We're not looking at years down the road to roll out the changes for the different neighborhoods.
Nope, something we feel strongly about. We want to make the public as comfortable with it as possible, answer all the questions they have, see if we need to tweak the code at all. We don't anticipate that's going to take that much time.
Okay.
Some of the organizations may request a second meeting, so some of this might get pushed, some of these neighborhoods, to early 2024, but I'd really like to bring all of these forward by the end of this year or in 2024.
So we're not looking at singling out particular neighborhoods and leaving them different than the rest of the city.
No.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. In that same vein, I do have a couple questions. You mentioned developing, neighborhood-specific context area like we did in Lakeside, or tweaking it like we did in Nelson and whatnot. What consideration was given to tweaking it in these three particular neighborhoods? Because this is essentially the same that was brought to us previously. I believe we now have the ACUs as well. Is it just corners? I guess that was going to be another question I had, the ACU related, or if that's maybe not been amended yet to include ACUs. I know there was some conversation of, accessory commercial units.
Yes.
So folks know what accommodating neighborhood enterprise,
Yes.
so to speak. And I believe, did we formally adopt that already, or is that?
No, it's heavily mentioned all throughout the master plan.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we're going to be tackling that next as well.
So what I'm wondering is, then essentially it's the same version now for Jackson Hill, Angel, and McLaughlin, the entirety of it, versus 21 months ago when we were last examining this. Was there consideration given to tweaking it for, say, Jackson Hill versus McLaughlin and Angel, or a portion of Jackson Hill relative to, so it's not the entirety of Jackson Hill? Can you explain what consideration, or walk us through
Sure.
and how you came to the conclusion to bring back urban residential context area form-based code for the entirety of these three neighborhoods?
Yep. So the form-based code urban residential context area was created in 2015, and we worked with consultants to do so. The consultants worked with us to study these neighborhoods and bring this code to something we could expand. They didn't know the neighborhood boundaries. That wasn't something that they were looking at doing. But we noticed that Nelson, Jackson Hill, McLaughlin, and Angel, as far as the way the blocks are set up, and the 33-foot wide to 66-foot wide lots that were originally platted, with alleys all over these neighborhoods, without looking at a boundary map, you wouldn't know where one neighborhood starts and the other ends because they're so similar. So it's not that we haven't tweaked the code. It's through these meetings with Nelson and with these other three neighborhoods that we have tweaked the code just a little bit on density and the requirement for alleys. So we've already made some of these changes, and I do not see any reason to have a different type of code because it was originally adopted to work with all of our downtown neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that reminder about the alley, because that was going to be my other question. We did 21 months or so ago, when we were last visiting this, there was that tweak at that time to require alleyway access for quadplexes. But not triplex. So if you want to have a quadplex, you have to have rear access from an alleyway, right?
Or even a threeplex.
Or even a triplex.
Yep.
Okay, so duplex, single family duplex doesn't have the requirement, but a triplex or quadplex does have to have rear access from an alleyway.
Yeah, and Jackson Hill is a great example of this. A lot of the alleys in Jackson Hill have been vacated. Mm-hmm. So we're probably not going to see many, or maybe any at all, 3-4 units because it doesn't have the criteria. What we're probably going to see a lot of, if we see an increase in density, is going to be duplexes and accessory dwelling units.
Okay, nice. Which are the two that, honestly, when we were talking about this 21 months ago, I'm like, I'd be fine with, amending our zoning all across the entire city to allow duplexes and ADUs, like everywhere. Like that would create the allowance for a lot more housing opportunities in our city.
And that may be, after meeting with these next neighborhoods, that may be the approach. Form-based code may not be the approach because of the design standards. It'd be very easy to just say we don't need these design standards that help construct what a house should look like in an urban area because of the small lot sizes. It's simply amending that R1, R2, and R3 to no longer just be single family anymore, to allow duplexes or ADUs.
To allow more flexibility. Yep. Which I think is key for our community to understand, that as we're evaluating reevaluating our existing zoning and what it could be and should be to better serve our community, our growing community, to keep costs constrained and to provide property owners more flexibility, more choice in the types of housing that they want to live in, or create that multi-generational wealth through having the accessory dwelling units, or a duplex, living on one side and renting out the other side. We're simply looking at how do we create more flexibility and choice. And in doing so, hopefully combat this housing crisis, keep costs constrained, and help ensure that our existing residents can remain in our community while still being able to accommodate and welcome new residents to add vibrancy to our city. I do have more questions, but I think our city manager, do you have something to add?
Yeah, it was something that when Director Eckholm was up here talking, triggered in my memory, and something that Director Franzik was talking about too, about looking at different neighborhoods and how we're moving through this. So as the commission knows, over the past month we've done bus or trolley tours of the various neighborhoods. When we were traveling on the east side and going through, particularly through the Angel neighborhood, one of the questions that I got there in that trolley tour was, when were they going to be able to start having the infill housing program come through, and when were they going to be able to start benefiting from some of the same things that they've seen in their neighboring neighborhoods? And then that also came up during the McLaughlin Angel Neighborhood Association meeting that we were at last month. This is a question that we're getting from the engagement that's been happening with through the planning department as it's been going through the master planning process, and as we've been looking at things, staff is starting to get those questions on when they can start benefiting from that as well in those neighborhoods.
Yeah, great point. And that's what we're hearing already from residents in our neighborhoods, that they'd like to see these changes so that they can see the benefits of that investment in their neighborhoods and in their community. And as we know too, filling the gaps makes for safer neighborhoods. Instead of having vacant property that may not be the most well maintained, filling in those gaps makes for a safer neighborhood. Can you speak to the parking requirements for the form-based code urban residential context area? Like off-street parking requirements? Because if I remember correctly, there are none?
Correct. There's none.
Okay.
But the way that the code is written, there's plenty of space to put vehicles. It really shouldn't change. We have a maximum amount of pavement you can place on a lot. It's not going to change. The code does a really good job of hiding the parking in the back. It actually requires it where there is an alley. So just parking side to side on a 40-foot lot, you've got enough for 5-6 parking spaces.
So that's
right there.
required even for a single family? That if you have access to an alley, you have to put parking in the rear?
Yeah. The code does not encourage or even allow a curb cut in the front unless you don't have an alley.
Because that's one of the hiccups for me, and this is maybe not because obviously coming to a public hearing on Thursday, I'll be coming to the city commission subsequently, and it's a better opportunity to discuss it, but that does feel like, as we're expanding outside of our core urban area, because the downtown area was developed with a lot of that rear access, not having the curb cuts in the front. But these other neighborhoods, when you get farther afield from that core downtown, have those curb cuts. And so, even when in this sheet that you talk about the rollout, these are the neighborhoods we're coming to, and it was mentioned Oakview and Shelton Park may be suitable for the downtown version of form-based code, the urban residential context area. But those neighborhoods are very different. I grew up over there. Those are very different than the core downtown, and I personally would not necessarily see that being the same. So that just gives me pause, the parking aspect of it, because now you are changing the structural character of a neighborhood by not allowing that and forcing it into the rear alleys, particularly when, and I know Commissioner Ramsey's talked about this in the past in terms of how well we maintain our alleys. So if we're forcing more people to use those alleys, and we don't necessarily have a plan in place to maintain those alleys in addition to maintaining our existing street grid, that just gives me pause. So we're getting to some nitty gritty, but I just want to share my thought process and some of the concerns there.
Yeah.
Particularly like Jack's a portion of Jack Leonard. I was driving down there and saw all those new houses being built. All the mailboxes are at the street. And so if we're pushing more people to park in the street and not necessarily off street because we don't have the requirement, are we going to then be obstructing mail delivery there? Or also Campbell Field is another neighborhood that and I don't know how this came about. It's interesting. It's in the neighborhood I grew up. It's all you go to the door and deliver the mail, and where I live now, you deliver the mail at the door, not at the street. That seemed always a rural thing to me. But we have some neighborhoods that is set up that way, that the mailboxes are at the street. And so that's another dynamic that I have in my head.
Yeah, all good points. If I could address these.
Sorry, I threw a lot at you.
Yeah. Try to remember all these. Regulating parking in the back and decreasing curb cuts in the front is going to make more on-street parking spaces.
This is true.
A lot of the neighborhoods around the outside of downtown have vacated their alleys. So it's a moot point. They're going to have a curb cut anyways. Also, it's another good topic to when we discussed, do we want this type of form-based code out here where there's no alleys? And we're requiring people to park in the back when they can't do it? Or do we just amend the single-family zoning and we don't worry about where a car parks? We just have them park where they traditionally park in single-family zonings. So these are all things we want to talk through with the neighborhoods, and it's really helpful when you get into the neighborhood and you start talking to people who are there every single day, noticing when there's parking problems and when that may arise and why you might not want to adopt that code, or at least the specific part of it that deals with parking, because parking out in Beechwood Bluffton may be very different than it is parking in Angel.
Yeah,
So.
Indeed. Speaking of engaging with the community, I just want to say that my appreciation to you and the entire team and the Development Services Division on going out into our neighborhoods and holding these meetings and conversations with our neighbors about zoning, about housing needs, having those conversations and carrying that feedback forward into the policy making. So that I want to commend and express my appreciation to you and your team for doing that work.
Thank you.
My final question, I think, at this time is in terms of outlook, because we hit all the neighborhoods, or I think pretty much all the neighborhoods in terms of your outlook. But my final question is, what are we going to do with Jefferson Street? So I had brought that up, a couple years ago and said, hey, I'm not keen on expanding form-based code all over our city and leaving Jefferson exactly as it is, R1, given the context of some of the notable people who live on this street who were or are in positions of influence. And so some people feel like that we're being biased or we're allowing exclusionary, zoning to exist on one particular street and nowhere else. So what's our plan for Jefferson Street?
I would be more than happy to propose a rezoning at the next meeting. I do apologize. That was a discussion we had several years ago, and it must have slipped my mind. I have no reason to want to keep Jefferson Street single family. So.
Okay. So we are going to be moving forward with that rezoning there then as well. Okay. Cool. Well, I appreciate knowing that. Commissioners, any other final thoughts or questions right now on this item and the outlook for how we're moving forward with rezoning across our city? Commissioner St. Clair.
I just want to thank you for all of your hard work and the rest of the department. I know that this has been something that has been in the works since before I was even thinking about running for the commission. And I know that it has been very challenging in lots of ways. And I appreciate the slow approach to help people understand that there is going to be gentrification, and this is our best shot at reducing the impact rather than just going full speed ahead. I think that has paid dividends, and I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair.
Much credit to Jamie Pesh as well here, who's always at these meetings with me, and we're always handling these together. So.
Indeed. Thank you. Anything else? No? And we're all set here then tonight. Thank you, Mr. Franzik. We appreciate the work
All
you're
right.
doing.
Feel free to stop by the public hearing on Thursday.
Yes, Thursday, 4 p.m. in this room. There'll be a public hearing on the rezoning to form-based code urban residential context area for R1, R2, R3, and RT zones within the Jackson Hill neighborhood, Angel neighborhood, and McLaughlin neighborhood. And that will be public hearing here, 4 p.m. this Thursday, September 14th. And then you expect the Planning Commission will make a recommendation whether in support or opposition to the rezoning or some variant of that. And then that will come to the City Commission. You expect that likely to come to the City Commission at our, probably not the, you think maybe October?
No, the end of September.
So it's going to come back to us
yeah.
at the September 26th.
Yeah, I'm working on my
Okay.
agenda item right now, so.
Okay, so commissioners, you can expect this to be on our general session agenda for Tuesday, September 26th. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you all.
All right, next up, driver's license for undocumented individuals, the manager's office, but I believe that's by way of Commissioner Ramsey. Would you like to report out on this, Mr. Ramsey?
Yes.
All right, have at it.
I would. It's only 7:30 and it feels like it's so much later. So you guys are gonna have to give me grace. I want to thank the city manager and offices for getting this on the agenda for tonight. But partners to our north, Oceana, and then our partners in Ottawa County, are all looking at how we address the fact that not all of our neighbors are able to have a driver's license based on a law that was passed in 2008. We had some very different people in our state capital, and the way that they identified those that we call neighbors was a very overly stringent process, and so they took away the driving privileges of many of the people that live in our great state. You're going to hear it referenced a lot as migrants or immigrants or migrant workers, and that's what they are. It is immigrants. It is immigrants that are undocumented, meaning that they do not have a social security number because they are not U.S. citizens. And that is okay. You can still have a driver's license to operate a vehicle in the United States and not be a U.S. citizen. That can happen in any country that you go to. I say any, but that could be different. Don't come for me. But I know that if I go to Spain, I can apply for a temporary Spain driver's license and get one there and drive a car. So last year at the Livability Lab that was launched by both Access Health and the Community Health Innovation Region, there was a team that came together to rectify the situation because, as you guys know, here in West Michigan, many of our neighbors are immigrant workers that come here for the summer and then go back home to Mexico and other Latin American countries and live for the winter. So this is where they do most of their work. They are currently being denied access to driver's license and all of the safety that comes along with that. So if you think about all the things that we drive to and from for, they are not allowed to do so. And it also puts them in a precarious position because then if they have to drive because of an emergency situation and they get pulled over, they are now in trouble for several things. And we know, especially under the previous administration at a federal level, there was a lot of persecution of people of color in this country, regardless of where your country of origin was. And so this group has gotten together and put together some amazing information that I have shared with all of you this evening, separate of our standard agenda packet, so that we could review it because I will be presenting at our next commission meeting a resolution that's very akin to the one signed in Oceana and in Ottawa, saying that we support this at a state level, that they should, Michigan as a democratic state, should revisit this law that was signed in and really just revert to what it was before. There's a lot of information in that packet. I would invite you to reach out to me. I will connect you to the passionate team of people that are doing this great work because they know head and shoulders above what I do. They also have a fact sheet that they can share with all of us or that they can speak to that's in there, I think, about all of those common things. So I'm going to say one right now. Being an undocumented citizen and having a driver's license allows you the opportunity to vote. That is not true. period. And so, but that's the big thing right now is that all that voter fraud. There's absolutely no opportunity for you to vote with just a Michigan driver's license. So I invite you all to read this information and to reach out with questions previous, because we're going to have them come up. And they're going to share some great things at the commission meeting. And I would love if we could all support this resolution to support our neighbors across the lake shore. So please reach out if you have questions before.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Would you entertain any questions right this moment?
Oh, sure. Have at it.
All right, commissioners, do you have any questions at this moment? Of course, if you don't, you're welcome to follow up subsequently
At
with
any
questions.
time, yeah.
But
I
are
sent
there
you
any?
like 8 documents
When?
today. After I sent them separate than the agenda because I didn't want them to be lost. The agenda's already 900 pages, so I sent.
Oh, okay. You
yeah.
sent it at the beginning of our meeting. Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
So that way I could say I sent this to you, and it'll be at the top of your inbox. So when you get home tomorrow, you can worry about that then.
Tomorrow.
Then
I
it'll
came
be at the
out
bottom.
tonight.
Yeah.
All right,
No, I have no.
commissioners,
idea.
any questions for Commissioner Ramsey at this time? Or otherwise, thoughts to share? No. All right. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions, Mayor, but Commissioner Ramsey, I hear what you're saying, and a lot of the things that's going on with immigration, and I just attended a conference, like I said, and probably 30% of them was from the Latino, Hispanic
Yeah.
group with their issues becoming citizens, and even before I became a commissioner as a community organizer, some of the things that was on my agenda was jobs, immigration, and education. And I've worked with Hispanic groups for quite some time, from K-12 all the way through post-secondary. So there's definitely a place for Hispanic groups in this nation, because we all have to live here, and anything that we can do to support people that help them have a better quality of life, I think, with their families, and as long as they're coming in here legally doing the work, and I don't see any reason why we can't, visit this and talk about it, and you can address any questions or issues.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The documents that you shared with us, does that include a model resolution or the resolution from the other communities?
No, there are 2 that are. One is out of Kalamazoo, and the other was from. The Oceana one. But I did not include those because we are going to make it a little bit more individualized for Muskegon, because we don't directly within northern Muskegon County. There are some immigrants that live in our county, but none that live directly in the city of Muskegon that we can track. So we included a couple of surveys from those who we spoke to that you will see in those documents, specifically about driver's license. And then ours will be more of like a city that supports, whereas Oceana and Ottawa both have agricultural epicenters. So we didn't think it was appropriate for us to just blanket that.
Just replicate the exact version, refine it to reflect our community. And you anticipate bringing that resolution?
It'll be shared with the next agenda.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you.
Then, moving on, we're about to get public comment underway. If we can get that scrolling. But before we do that, Mr. Vanderhyde, DPW Director, if you could come up and speak to us, kind of update us on the Shoreline Drive road diet, because I hear you're not going to be here tomorrow at our general session. So I want to take advantage of your time tonight while you're here with our work session. If you can just update us on the Shoreline Drive road diet study.
Absolutely. Thank you, and thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. And my apologies for being absent tomorrow. The pilot is obviously well underway. From a technical and engineering perspective, it's going very well. We're getting the data that we need. We are receiving a good amount of feedback from the public. We've implemented essentially two of the things, the four or so things that we talked about when I came to you and sought formal permission. Obviously, the lane closures and the associated data collection and so forth. And then we've implemented the landscaping within the shoreline corridor pilot area, right? The two things that are still outstanding are additional imagination stations surrounding like bus stations and parking and things like that. We're working with a company to develop some pictures and banners and things that will go in place of those physical assets in the right of way. MDOT wasn't comfortable placing cars and bus stops and things in their street just for safety reasons. And again, similarly, they were not comfortable with anything other than chalk paint for the street art, which would be washed away in the first rainfall or even perhaps the first time the sprinklers were turned on. So we're still working with them to determine if, and some other suppliers and so forth, to determine if there are semi-permanent chalk paints or other types of temporary paint that MDOT would accept. So we're kind of 2 out of 4 of the way there, but the important pieces are out there. Again, the pilot runs as planned through the end of October. And if anyone has any questions or comments about how things are going or the feedback they're hearing from residents, I'd welcome it.
All right. So through the end of October, not the end of this month. So there's still plenty of time for those other elements to be implemented.
Absolutely.
Okay. Commissioners, questions or thoughts on the status of the study? Commissioner Ramsey.
I just want to thank you and the team because I know you guys are getting a lot of questions, whether you're getting it through your phone mail, what is this, telephone, your email, voicemail, text messages while you're at Meijer shopping for bags of pre-bagged salad. I know that it's happening. So thank you guys so much for being able to share every time you're engaged so that our neighbors know that they can come to someplace and talk to someone.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. As we are getting that feedback and those questions, are we updating our project page because we already had some frequently asked questions and answers, are we updating that with new questions that are coming up and giving the answers for them?
Yes, we did add a frequently asked question just last week regarding a pedestrian overpass and so forth. Some of that information is already on there, but calling it out in that frequently asked questions section so that it's a little bit more visible for folks. Yeah.
Okay. Has that been updated? Because I know I asked you, myself, and maybe some other commissioners in terms of how we're collecting data. And is that being addressed in the FAQ, like the data collection process?
Yeah, we were waiting on one more answer from the consultant, but we will get that updated very shortly.
Okay. Yeah. I know that's something that we often hear about. How are you exactly collecting that data? And then, given that we do have some time, so the planters, is there reason why? So they're not situated how I initially envisioned them when we approved that. Is the state forcing us to put them where they're putting? Can you give any context or explanation as to why they are where they are? Because they don't seem like they necessarily add utility or help envision from my perspective. So I just would like some understanding.
Sure. We initially had them placed closer to the intersections. However, MDOT asked that we move them out of what they call the intersection taper area. So basically, as the barrels come out of an intersection and curve around and sort of make their own radius, right? They want the planters further out, so to speak, from the intersections than where those curves of barrels are happening.
So the people don't hit them?
So the people don't hit them.
Okay.
Trucks don't hit them, etc. And that results in them needing to be probably 50 to 100 feet, sort of away from the intersection. Mm-hmm. So that's the one piece of exclusion or whatever that we've received from the state. We placed them as we did with the idea of calling to mind, like a parking bump out, right? Such as you see on 3rd Street and areas of Western, sort of those areas that are curbed and landscaped in order to protect and to a certain extent screen parking areas and other things like that. So we placed them grouped at the beginning and at various intersections in order to call that to mind. We've had a few folks suggest other ideas, and we're certainly open to moving them or changing their arrangement. I think the main thing is to remember that they're intended to evoke just a feeling that something else could be in this space, right? Not necessarily to suggest that we want to place landscaping there permanently or in any particular orientation, simply to say, as a part of this pilot, we recognize that folks are being inconvenienced, and here are some of the ways that we envision this space could be different or better as we have those community conversations going forward.
So, thank you for those insights. Do we have within the confines of what MDOT allows, do we have opportunity or flexibility to reposition them in a way that perhaps does add utility or envisioning of potential utility? Because I'm not necessarily seeing it like from a landscaping or aesthetic piece, like we have a median, we have shoulders, like those things can be landscaped, those can be beautified. Like we don't necessarily need planters in the middle of a road to add beauty necessarily. So I guess I envision them being used in a way that presented or could reflect potential new utility for the space, creating space making, place making, and public spaces. So I'm just wondering if there are opportunities, and maybe this isn't a lot, but particularly, it's probably not allowed because I think you said that at the intersections they want to keep them away from the intersections. But I'm just wondering at some of those key intersections where you're seeing a lot of pedestrian traffic, particularly Festival, at Heritage Landing, at that intersection, if there's a way to position them so as to create safer space for people to wait for the light to change to cross, and then it shortens the crossing time as well. But that's a no-go from the state, or that's something that could be explored. I'm just trying to understand how we might be able to.
I have a question for you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Didn't we vote, and Dan, remind me, didn't we veto the dollars that would have gone to make the imagination stations more of exactly what the mayor is talking about? Because we didn't want to...
We vetoed the cycling. We vetoed the commuter lane.
Big cycling lane.
Oh, the
That's
big
what we
cycling
vetoed.
lane. Okay. I thought, so I understand why the planners are where they are, but I thought we said no to that and didn't give any more money.
No, we said no to paying for the commuter lanes.
Gotcha.
But otherwise, we wanted to have the imagination space of like how this could be reused or add utility, repurposed, and it's just not for me.
I don't see it either. You're fine.
I don't see
It's
it.
okay.
Particularly because they're so close, tightly connected. There's like 5 of them right on top of one another. I just don't see it, and I'm just wondering if there's a way that they could be adjusted to perhaps help people envision new utility.
Sure. So to answer your original question about the pedestrian spaces and so forth, MDOT did specifically exclude sort of that area of the roadway that would probably be in what might be considered the crosswalk, right? That's going to be within those areas where the barrels are curving to create the new radius that MDOT wasn't comfortable with. What we could potentially do is put them up on the terrace near the crosswalks. I'm not sure that provides, exactly what you're looking for because it doesn't allow them to get out further into the roadway in a protected fashion or anything.
Yeah.
But those crosswalk areas on the pavement, at least, were specifically excluded by MDOT.
Okay. How would these banners that you're talking about, how would they be set up?
So they'll be, as we envision them today, they'll be set up with essentially crash-worthy signposts. So the sandbagged T-posts and so forth that normally support construction signs. They'll support signposts that will have like a mesh banner or mesh visual stretched between them that will have a parked car, a bus stop, things like that, that will call to mind those imagination stations that we were hoping to put out there. That again, MDOT wasn't comfortable with, the physical assets being out there, but they were comfortable with, sort of crash-worthy pictures of them, frankly.
Gotcha. And I understand that. MDOT's perspective on that. So, okay. Well, I appreciate the clarity and the insights. Commissioners, any additional questions while we have Director Vanderhyde here? Commissioner St. Clair.
Thanks. Wondering, there had been some discussion, and I don't remember who was part of the discussion, about having a video feed of the traffic, maybe streaming to the city's web page. Does anybody
Yes.
know anything about that?
Talk to the manager about
Okay.
that. You got an
All right.
update for us?
Yeah.
You, not you. All right.
Yeah. So last week I authorized work. Jason is working on that in IT. It will be on Trinity Health Arena. I didn't say which direction it was going to face, just whichever way was the easiest. It'll be hooked into their fiber there, and then we'll be able to get it up on the website. The goal is to have it up by the end of this week.
Nice.
Now, I just said that. So we'll see. But they started working on it at the beginning of last week. Was that when those emails were going around, Dan?
Yeah.
I think it was closer to the end of last week.
End of last week, okay. But I did authorize it, so yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's going to be nice because a number of people have not been through the area, but are have the worst fears of like it's just a continuous log jam or backup and don't even want to come through there. But if you're able to provide a live stream, you can at least understand what current conditions are. So hopefully people aren't so afraid of coming through there. And please continue driving Shoreline Drive, not Muskegon and Webster. But anywho, thank you, Director Van Hyde. Appreciate your work.
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna go to public comment now. So, Commissioner Ramsey, you had?
No, I just broke the arm off my chair.
Sorry, I didn't get around to fixing that.
Need legal counsel.
We're gonna go to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give public comment at this time? No? All right. You have an opportunity if you'd like to give comment. Up to 3 minutes. All right. Then I'm going to go to the phones, but I'm going to the number just scrolled. I was going to read it out. I know, but I wanted to read the number too because I promised somebody I would start reading the numbers to folks. The phone number is 231-724-6721. Again, that is 231-724-6721. If anyone wishes to call in and provide public comment, you have up to 3 minutes to provide remarks. Please announce your name and the neighborhood in which you live if you are a city resident, and if you're not a neighbor in one of our neighborhoods, please share what city, village, or township you may be calling from. And so we'll give a few more moments for people to call in. If anyone right now, nobody? Madam Clerk? Okay, we'll give a few more moments for people to potentially call in. No phone calls?
No, Mayor.
All right. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Ramsey to adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care. Be well.